Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode. And in today's episode, we'll be talking about classes and IDs. I remain your host, Daniel Michael, and I'm glad to have you join me today on this episode. And in today's episode, as I said, we'll be talking about classes and IDs. Classes and IDs make referencing HTML elements from scripts and style sheets easier. The class attribute can be used on one or more tags and is used by CSS for styling. IDs, however, are intended to refer to a single element, meaning the same ID should never be used twice. IDs are generally used with JavaScript and internal document links, and are discouraged in CSS. This topic contains helpful explanation and examples regarding proper usage of classes and ID attributes in HTML. So we'll be giving you an example, giving an element a class. So the first thing we'll be doing right now is giving an element a class. Here I'll be introducing the div tag. I'll be introducing the div tag. It also has an opening and a closing. The div tag is used to actually position elements or position contents or sections of the web page, but it can be used to move elements. It can be used to move sections of the web page to different areas of your screen. So to specify a class attribute, we go into the opening tag of the div tag and then write class. Is an attribute, so it must have the equal to and its quotation mark. So the class attribute can have unlimited number of values. Now these values in this class can be used by your cascading style sheet to style its content, like the content of this div. Thereby, like I told you, the div can be used to position a block of text to any particular section of your screen. So CSS aids the ability of the div to move those contents to sections of the screen using the class attributes. So we can specify a value like div1 here, or I'll be using values from Bootstrap, which is a framework for CSS. So the first thing I'll be specifying there is the flex or display flex, which is d hyphen flex. So what this does actually, the CSS actually use this deflex to select this div element and its content. Whatever is in between the opening tag and the closing tag of this div element having the class with a name or value of deflex, it aligns them in the same line. When it is flex, it aligns them on the same line, on the same straight line, a horizontal line. That's the function of this deflex. So you can still have something that's called d none. D none. What this does is means display none. The deflex means display flex. That is flexible. Make it flex. While the d none means display none. What it does is it hides this particular div from the web page, although it's inside the markup, but it hides this div from the web page. I can still specify another class. Let's say mt5. What this does, it actually gives this particular div a margin top of 5 pixels from the top. Maybe there might be another element above this particular div. For instance, maybe we say we are having a heading tag. This heading tag is now having a text. This is a heading. So you can see it's closer to this h4, but we don't want it to be like that when it's on our web page. So Bootstrap uses this mt5 to create a margin of 5 pixels between the top of this div and the bottom of this heading tag. So there will be a space of 5 pixels. We can still specify other classes inside here, things like padding, let's say padding 3. It also creates padding within, what's this pop? Okay, let's ignore this. Not possible without a header, blah blah blah. It's there. So the padding, the P3 class name is also used by Bootstrap to specify padding around every other element inside this div. By the time we are not talking about cascading style sheet, which is CSS, then you understand what margin and padding is. So that's what this padding does. It's used to create spaces between or around elements inside the div tag. So we have given an element a class name. Now we want to give an element an ID. Remember I said IDs are always unique. IDs are always unique. So to do so, you create another div. Yes, we can create another div. Now in this div, same thing goes to it as in the opening. We specify our ID on the opening tag. It also has the equal to and the quotation mark because it's an attribute. Like I said, the ID attribute is always unique across all elements of a web page. So there can be conflicts if the name of an ID reflects more than once or appears more than once on a particular markdown file. Now we can also specify the value of this ID. In the case of ID, we can give it any name, we can give it any value. And IDs are generally discouraged by style sheets. It is not advisable to use IDs in style sheets. IDs are mostly used in JavaScript or within the markup file for anchors and anchor tags, like scrolling to a particular section of the page. So there are actually acceptable values for these IDs. The only restrictions on the values of an ID are it must be unique in the document. It must not contain any space characters. It must contain at least one character. That is to say, IDs must be unique across the document, a particular document. You can use the same ID in another document that is still within the same site, but in a particular document like this one, we're having the index.html, you can only specify an ID once. It must not contain white space character, that is any space. This cannot be an ID. Creating a space like this ID is invalid because you cannot select it. In JavaScript, you cannot, even within the HTML document, you cannot select it. So it's invalid. And again, it must contain at least one name or one character, either it being a number. So we say so the value can be all digits, just one digit, just a punctuation characters, or it can also include special characters, whatever, just that it cannot contain white space. So these are valid characters. Let's say 999 is a valid um, ID. We can also specify special characters just such as this. They are valid because it can be selected. We can also say this, it's valid because it can be selected. We can specify whatever we want to specify within the ID. It is valid, but it must not be a white space, and it must be unique across all documents. For instance, now we're having this particular value here too. We're having it here. Now this is invalid simply because in JavaScript will actually not be able to select the second one. It will only understand the first one. It will only understand the first one. We only understand the first one. So IDs must be unique across the entire element. IDs must be unique across the entire element. For classes, the rules for classes are essentially the same for an ID. The difference is that class values do not need to be unique in the document. Yes, I told you, class IDs or class values do not need to be unique across the document. It can be multiple. You can use the denon, for instance, the deflex, you can use it in any class within this particular document. It doesn't mean it has no effect. So the importance is important to note that it's important to know that IDs and classes are treated. I mean, it's important to know how IDs and classes values are treated outside of HTML. So there are problems associated with duplicate IDs. Like I told you, JavaScript will not be able to select the second element or second tag having the same ID as the first one. For instance, this tag is far away. This particular tag is far away from this one within the document. It cannot be selected. The first one will be selected, but the second one will not be selected. So that's an issue. That's why IDs must be unique. And I believe in today's episode, we have been able to cover or understand what IDs and classes are. And if you are visiting this channel for the first time, or you are a returning viewer or returning student, ensure to subscribe to this channel and turn on your notification icon to receive updates such as this for our upcoming episodes. So in our next episode, we'll be talking about data attributes. We have come to the end of this episode. See you next time.